Hello everyone, and welcome to another scrapbook layout design process video where I'm going to go through how I have selected a sketch, how I've printed my photos to suit, and how I've chosen my papers for this layout. These photos here are from the creative design team trip that we did to Vancouver and then over to Victoria, and we spent the morning walking around Victoria before we went into high tea. And I've chosen a sketch from volume 2 of our 12 by 12 sketchbook, and even though my photos aren't set out exactly the same as this, there are some similarities to it. I prepped this in Canva and I've printed it out on an 11 by 8.5 sheet of photo paper, and I'll link to a video that I've done. I'll put a link below on how you can do this in Canva, and I wanted to keep sort of a lineal design to this, and that's where I've taken the inspiration for my photo placements for this. But I did sort of start off with a 4 by 6 photo on this side and a 4 by 6 photo on this side, and then when I was building them up, I've kept the 4 by 3 sort of sizes here, but I wanted to put in more photos, and that is what's so great about these sketches. I knew that I could use this area here to add in more photos. I can shrink my photo down lengthways and put another one in here of the beautiful gardens that surrounded the Empress Hotel before we went in, and other parts of the harbour and everything while we were walking around. And I wanted to add in those additional photos and create some softness here with the flowers, as well as some of the architecture and the totem poles that were around. Now this photo here, Victoria Police, I thought I would take a photo of that because I live in the state of Victoria in Australia, so that's why that photo is in there. So with this one, I have started with my photos, and then I'm going to work out what papers I'm going to bring in that will suit my photos that I've done. Now the next page on this album, I've already done the video for this and I'll link that below as well, is when we went in for high tea at the Empress, and it was very fancy and I used gold foil papers, and I love how elegant this looks. And I was thinking of bringing in that same paper pack, which is Nature's Sweetness, and combining that in here. But when I was looking at the papers, I didn't want to take away from the next double page spread with all the gold foil. I want to keep this more of an outdoor look. So I don't know if you do this. I get out quite a lot of paper sometimes when I'm trying to choose papers that will suit my photos. I've got 3 collections here, and what I love about the Take to the Sky papers, even though it has a vintage aeroplane and travel theme, I knew that there were papers in here that didn't have that sort of theme with them, and I remembered that there was this grey sort of brick pattern. It has aeroplanes on the other side, but I loved it when I put it on the page because it matched in with the buildings, I think, around here. So that's going to be one of my diagonal cut pieces. And then I was looking at what I was going to put with this, and I looked at Country Lace because that has some subtle patterns, and I thought about putting this one here, the blues, because there's the blue sky. I thought that might work quite well, but I think it's going to pull focus from my photos when I put another pattern like this with it. And then I thought about using the denim that's in here. That could work quite well, but I do want to bring in a foliage or a leaf element onto this with my pattern paper. So I put this one aside, and then I brought out Season of Green and Gold, the Specialty Designer Series paper, and the Graceful Greenery Vellum, because I thought I might use the green that's in here. Just going to pull that out. And I quite like how that looks together. Now I'm putting these on a little bit of an angle like that because if you remember in the sketch, that is the design that is on here. And the cutting guide gives you all the instructions on how to get the perfect angles for this. So I'm just going to bump my photos up a little bit and leave that there because I quite like the look of that. I thought about bringing in the actual pattern paper, and I think that works quite well too. I'm trying to stop the papers falling off the bottom. I'm going to bump that up just a little bit more. And then I wondered if I would be brave enough to cut into the vellum because it's a little bit softer than this. And I quite like how with the vellum, the brick sort of pattern is showing through, and it just adds a little bit more softness to the page. So I think this is the direction I'm going to go. Just going to put these pieces back in the envelope. And I think, now that I've moved everything away from here, that this is going to work quite nicely on the page. So I'm going to cut into this vellum paper. Then I think I will bring in maybe a pine colour or a green colour. You could use Mossy Meadow. But I do have some pine left over from close to my heart. So I could use that to make a border of this or mat these whole entire photos, and then have this, or I could bring in a more subtle paper. I'm just going to see how this looks. This is rosemary from Close to My Heart, and I think I like the softness of that. Now, bear in mind, there will be a little bit of a white border. I'm going to turn my photo upside down here so I can have a little look. And I think that I quite like the rosemary with this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut all the pieces for the paper elements as per the instructions. And then what I'll be able to do is bring in the Stampin' die sets that coordinates with this Season of Green and Gold and the Graceful Greenery vellum. And I'll be able to cut some pieces of that with the leaves so I can do these embellishment clusters here. I've got the base of the layout all set out here, and I've started doing just some loose cutting around the vellum piece so that I can use the die cuts. So in this golden greenery set, there's stamps and then use the die cuts with, or you can use the die cuts on the vellum paper, and I've decided to cut a few out of the vellum just to match these triangle pieces that are coming across here. Or you can do standalone die cuts with some of them. You can see there's a heart one and another leaf one here. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to use the light side of rosemary or if I'm going to introduce some pine into this just to deepen it up a little bit. And there's also a sprig like this. So I'll just talk you through what I'm planning to do. I haven't die cut all these pieces yet. I have just loosely cut them out of the vellum, as I said, and I'm just working out where I'm going to put them. So I'm thinking I'm going to add more coming down around this area here. I'm going to pop some of these up onto foam tape. I'm going to test it on a little piece that I know that I can't use when I do die cutting. So I'm just going to cut this out and put a dimensional underneath it and see whether or not you can see the dimensional underneath it. I've just used my dot roller for these vellum pieces and you can't see any of the adhesive at all. I think it's because the vellum is quite thick, so it does work quite well. So I've just got a little dimensional and put it on the back of an off-cut piece. And I think what's going to happen is you can see a little bit of the white coming through. So I may not be putting those up on dimensionals. I'll put them straight down onto the pieces here. So that's why I cut some with the pine, because I thought maybe that will add a little bit more depth to it. Or I could just use the rosemary, and I've cut these on the lighter side of rosemary. So I'm very excited that Stampin' Up! Are going to be introducing more two-tone cardstock to their range next year, and some of the cardstock will be released very soon, I think 7th of January here in Australia, because that's when a brand new scrapbooking brochure is coming out. Thought I might make a tag to go along this piece here. If I was doing journaling on here, this is actually photo paper. I would cut a piece of white cardstock to fit there, but I think it might be fun to have, I'm going to take all those pieces away for the moment, to have a tag coming out here. I'm going to finish the tag off so that it matches these two pieces of paper here. So I've got an off-cut piece of this. I'm going to adhere direct to this tag, and I'm not sure I want to quite have this much of it. So I'm just going to run some adhesive across. I'm going to make this into my own one. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. I'm not really measuring. Now, Stampin' Seal Plus, you do have a little bit of time to move things along. I wasn't quite up to the edge there. I'm just going to trim away the side and across the top, just with my scissors. I could use a trimmer for this if I wanted to. So I've got that part of the topper, and I've gone crooked. I need to take this off and start again. So you do have a little bit of time, not much time. You can see it's a bit hard to take off. So I'm just going to put a little bit more of that there. What I might do, instead of cutting it crooked, is cut this to the height that I want it. So I've cut this at about 1 inch. I'm just going to overhang my tag here so that I can trim those bits away in a moment. And then I'm going to cut a piece so that I can put some of this vellum over the top, and that will tie it in with these pieces here. So I've cut 1 inch wide piece here to put directly over top, and I'm hoping that, I'm going to actually move this a little bit so I don't mark my photos. I'm really hoping that Stampin' Up! Bring in a repositionable dot roller. I know I move things around quite a lot, so I really want to have that ability to be able to peel things off and put them back down again later. So you can see the adhesive's not showing through at all for this. And then I can just get my scissors and trim this away. And then I'm going to make my own custom tag. I quite like how this is replicating the look of the paper here, and it's going to go across this area here, but I need to cut just some little corners off this. And then I'm going to take the piece that I've cut away from here and flip it over. Whoops, if I can hold on to it. This piece here that I've cut away, flip it over, hold it up into this corner. I've done this many times. And it's really good. I've got a tag punch, but it's a 2-inch wide tag punch, and sometimes I want some oversized ones. And I know I've got dies that I can do this with, but sometimes I just want to make a custom one of my own. So I really like how that looks. It brings in the pattern paper, and I'm just referring to the sketch as to where they've got the embellishments on the sketch. So I have more of an edge on this side. So this is where I'm going to replicate this sort of piece here. The florals and the leaves, the sprigs and the butterflies, they're there for recommendation only. You don't have to put those sort of embellishments on there. You could run balloons all the way up here or make Christmas trees, any sorts of embellishments at all. You could have a beach umbrella coming out of here and make it into a beach page. So when you're looking at the sketches, if there are florals or there might be balloons or something on a page, they're there for suggestions as to where to put some embellishment clusters. Because I've got more room on the right side here, I'm going to flip this sketch over so that this area will have all of these pieces. And then over this side, you can see that I've laid out some ABC letters. And I do want to point these out because they're in Last Chance products. So this one here is the classic letters, and I love this for scrapbooking, not just for card making, because it's a nice big font. And I've worked out that I can put Victoria all the way up there. I'm going to do a little test, I'll do that on camera, to work out what colour I'm going to do my stamping in. So I'll just put the V onto a block. I'm going to bring in Mossy Meadow, and I might bring in Shaded Spruce because that sort of matches this one. And I've just got this packet out so I can see what colour it is. I just cut the labels up and adhere them with sticky tape over the top of these envelopes. Garden Green, Mossy Meadow and Old Olive. It doesn't have Shaded Spruce, but I'm going to do a test with that. Old Olive I don't think will show up, but we'll just see. I may as well get all of them out so that I can see which one I like the most. So I've just got a scrap here. I'll start off using Mossy Meadow and see what that looks like on there. I think this might be the winner. I like how that looks up against it. I just need to clean off my stamp in between each test. I am going to try Old Olive. You never know. It might work quite well. This is actually, I have quite a few favourite colours, but I really do like Old Olive. That looks quite nice too. So now I just have to decide which one I'm going to use. So now I'm going to do a little test with Garden Green. And that looks nice. They're all really good options. It's going to be hard to pick which one to use. And because I've got everything out, I may as well try Shaded Spruce, even though it's not one of the listed colours for the pack. So I'm just going to hold that up against here and have a little look. They all work really well. I think I'm going to go with Mossy Meadow though. So I'm just going to close all of these up and do my stamping up the edge of the page here. So that means I need to turn my page around so I can work upside down. And I am hoping that I will be able to do the stamping for this onto the page because I'm actually working on the back side of this one that I did a while ago. This was the one that I did the Canva tutorial on how to do a large collage of photos on the page that I was talking about earlier. So I will link to that so that you can have a look at it. It might be something that you're interested in doing. I do actually love doing a big collage and just cropping one photo down. So it makes it really easy when it comes to doing photo mats to have a collage to work with. There's not too much of a bump here. Well, there is a little bit of one. So I am going to turn this one over. My old Versamats from Close to My Heart have a spongy side, so I'm hoping I'll be able to get away with this. If not, I'll just cut a piece of rosemary to this size and put it over top. So I'm just lining this up with the edge of the paper to try and get this all nice and straight. And that's worked well enough. I could go back in again if I wanted to, line it up. So I've messed that up, trying to line that up again. So what I'm going to do is do the better safe than sorry and cut a piece of rosemary to this size and do my stamping and put that over the top. So when you do a little mistake like this, it's not the end of the world. There's always a way to fix things up. And I'm going to do my stamping up towards the edge here, so that gives me somewhere to line things up to try and get everything all nice and straight. So I'm just going to continue on doing that and do some die cutting, and I'm going to have some additional little elements that I'm putting on there, and I'll be back with all that shortly. I've got my elements all adhered, and for the vellum pieces I just used dot roller, and I really only adhered the bottom part just so that they would have a little bit of lift on the page. The others I've adhered down or just with liquid glue, and I've grouped them so that there were 2 elements of the solids of each type, and then just a few of those vellum sprigs. And you can see, I think with my stamping, you cannot really tell that there's a little line here where I just had to stamp that extra little piece. I snuck it underneath my photos here, so I think that worked out quite well. Now for my tag, I did show the process of layering these pieces together, and then I did a little hole punch, and my new favorite tag finisher, which is this one. If you watched my video just the other day, you know that it's from the Grow with Love dies. This is coming out on the 7th of January here in Australia, and I just love that the little tag topper piece here has a tiny little hole in it, and the twine here is from the Natural Tones linen thread. I've used the garden green one, and I think that works quite well, but I'm going to place that here, and I decided it just looked a bit bare on the left edge. So what I'm going to do is attach one of these dies that I have created. I've used the light side of pine, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it across at the bottom edge of the tag here just to dress it up. So I had adhered this down to my page and then decided that it needed a little bit more. Now what I find with Barely Art glue is that in summer when it's hot, and it's quite warm here today, it does keep coming out the nib. So I tend to resort back to my Zig glue pen here. And I really only need to put glue onto certain pieces of this. I don't need to use the whole thing because I'm going to trim away the pieces that I'm not going to use. I'm going to go down the stem. I am squeezing just slightly on the barrel to release the glue, and I've got my all-purpose mat here so that I can place this over top, and any glue will just go onto the mat and I'll be able to wipe that off. So I'm just trying to work out how much I want to show of this. I think that looks just about right. So this takes a little bit to dry, not too much. And I think that's going to finish off the edge of my tag quite nicely. And when I do the string on these ones, I don't do the loop and loop it through. I just do one strand and then tie a knot. So that's adhered. I can trim away the excess. I cut a few too many of these, but that's okay. I've just put them into the stamp set to hold on to it so that I've got some for the next time I want to use these. I really love these sprigs. I love that you can use them on just about anything. I think leaves are basically my flowers. I love putting them on pages, and they worked quite well with the floral elements that are in a lot of these photos. So that's going to finish off that tag nicely. And then if I want my string here to sit perfectly, I'm thinking it's just going to sit like that. I'm going to put a little mini glue dot underneath here, roll it up and put that on, and that will hold that nicely in place. This was such a fun day. It was beautiful weather, and just being able to stop and take photos. And if you were following us on Instagram, you might recognize that this is the totem pole that I did my little clip to when we put a reel together to say, where are we? It was such a fun adventure being away, the 7 of us all together. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But it's wonderful to be able to put the photos onto the pages. I will be using shipping labels and typing up my journaling for this all in one go so I can print it all out and fit it onto the pages, because I know I have quite a lot to say, and when I type things I can fit more onto the piece here than I can when I actually handwrite. There's one thing I've forgotten. I've got them off to the side here. I thought I would use the iridescent pearl gems just to lighten things up a little bit. There's a lot of green on this page, and I think these will sort of replicate these elements here, but they are fairly subtle, and I think it's going to work quite well to have these nestled in amongst the leaf elements. I'm going to put a couple down here. I always try and put them so that they are nestled in amongst things. I really like how that looks. So I can put some more over on this side. And there are 2 different sizes of these, so I am just mixing up the sizes. And generally I do 3 at a time. in some areas. This one, I've got a set of 3 here, a set of 3 here. I might bring some more in down here because I really like how this is sort of brightening up all the greens, and some of them can go on the actual elements themselves. And I don't know about you, I get to this stage where I'm like, where am I going to put this one? So I'll just put that in there. I overthink things sometimes. And then, of course, I have to put some over on this side as well. So just sprinkling them in and around these little clusters. And I am getting the hang of this tool. Every now and then I don't pick one up quite how I want it to be picked up. 1, 2, I've got 3 there. And put 3 over on this side. And one more large one just nestled in amongst, or just in amongst the leaves here. I like how that just lifts the page just a little bit. I think you can see that they're sprinkled in amongst there, and it just adds a nice little touch to finish off the embellishment clusters. Thank you all for tuning in and watching this video process. It makes it so easy to start with a sketch when you've got photos in mind, and I hope you enjoyed my thought process on what papers I was going to use and combining 2 totally different pattern papers, a solid pattern paper and a vellum together, and the layering over top of this I think looks really good so that you can still see some of that brick type pattern in the background behind this vellum. As always, happy crafting everyone. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.